Is Ukraine making significant gains on the front lines, even as Russia falters? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It's August 15th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, taking a look at the control map, there's a few notable changes. The first of which is you can see Russian forces retreating just a little bit past Robotyne. You can see a number of these sort of northern roadways leading to the town are now at least listed as contested, with Russian forces retreating deeper into the town itself. When we look over towards Uruzane and Staromayorsk, you can see Ukrainian efforts to hold the town have been successful. There's been some reports of a Russian counterattack, but more and more Staromayorsk and Uruzane are listed as secured. Again, a sign that in all likelihood, at least these Russian forces defending Uruzane are have been driven out, and it seems like Russian morale and sort of their ability to launch counterattacks is looking very anemic. When we look towards Bakhmut, you can see minimal changes here to the front lines, just a few areas that are transitioning from newly liberated to liberated, just a mapping quirk. And then outside of Satove, you can see that Russian forces engaging in a counterattack and seizing this forested area here, likely to establish a better defensive position. But again, we've seen a fair amount of back and forth in this territory here. Some reports are that this is much more sparsely manned and garrisoned on both sides. So what you're seeing is likely when you have fewer troops defending a wider area of territory, things that would be non-notable changes in Bakhmut, right? A squad repositioning or a company withdrawing. When it's lighter territory like this, the changes tend to look more extreme, even though they may be as little as a company changing, being pushed back and advancing. When we look over to the combat map, we see that Russian forces are very, very sparse in terms of their offensive actions. This report says, according to the Ukrainian military, just 15 combat engagements with Russian forces, primarily in the Donetsk region. Again, it's not clear if this is a reporting error where they're only reporting Donetsk region clashes, but as you can see, it also correlates with an extremely small number of artillery missions along the front line. Notably, no artillery taking place at all in this Robotyne region. And while artillery appears to be trying to disrupt and counter Ukrainian advances in Uruzane, you're seeing artillery missions by Russia looking very light elsewhere. Possibly a sign that the Russian logistics system is really feeling the squeeze that Ukraine has been putting on it. And that would also explain a heavy reduction in total offensive actions, because Russian doctrine relies heavily on artillery, as well as, of course, having properly equipped, fed, and trained soldiers. And Ukrainian efforts, again, focusing on interdicting munitions going to Melitopol, would make sense that this is the area where you're going to see these reductions in fire missions. Again, this could just as easily be a reporting error, but I think it's worth acknowledging that there is at least some evidence that Russian forces are logistically being slowed. Anyway, guys, if you're interested in seeing the my analysis of the uncensored combat footage, in fact, YouTube actually demonetized my video yesterday, literally, and age restricted the video, literally because I showed the thumbnails from the members only content videos. That's how restrictive the platform has become towards combat analysts, war analysts in this conflict. I'm still not going to stop doing what I do, but if you want to support me, any one of these tiers gets you access to the members only area. That's where I do all my analysis of combat footage. And we have some absolutely wild footage that we covered 2 days ago of the aftermath of the Battle of Orozane. So if you're interested, the link is in the description, and you should definitely become a member at combatvetnews.com. When we look over to the news side, what I found fascinating and another sign of trouble in Russian logistics is that MarketWatch is reporting Russia hiking interest rates by 3.5 percentage points. So to give you a perspective on that, in the US, we have had the fastest series of rate hikes that we have ever experienced as a country. And that is a series of quarter percentage hikes spread out over basically like 12 to 18 months. Okay. And the reason I say that, and it was a news-making event when the U.S. Federal Reserve increased 0.5 percentage point. So this is an increase by Russian central bank 7 times greater than the frighteningly fast Fed interest rate increase. And this is a sign that the ruble, now bear in mind, guys, when you're a world reserve currency like the dollar, you just play a slower game. You play a little bit more deliberate chess because you're a battleship, right? Battleships turn more slowly. But you're not you're not talking about 7 times slower. So to see Russia make this massive hike in order to stabilize the ruble, it's a sign that the country is increasingly under strain. Again, remember, the ruble is what they use to purchase the shells, the body armor, the weapons that are equipping these troops. So you see events like this, you read stories like this interest rate hike, and it really leads you to believe that there is some sort of possibly logistic back-end issues happening in the Russian state. Now, Russia's been flexible, right? They've had the squeeze put on them before from an economics and logistics standpoint, and they've found a way around it. They've stayed in the fight. So it's tough to say if this will be part of a lasting problem, but this is certainly, again, in its own way, a pressure from behind on Russian forces. And I think it's core to the Ukrainian strategy at this point, right? At the end of the day, Orozane, Robotyne, they are not necessarily places of inherent value. They're villages of what look like less than 1,000 people in peacetime. And what they are, though, are places where Russian forces are being fixed and eliminated, in some cases in pretty large quantities. And that, I think, is the core Ukrainian strategy, to grind Russian forces out, grind out their logistics, at a reduced cost to Ukrainian forces. And so that slowly over time, Russia loses its ability to replenish its forces. This is, again, something that you would see in World War I, right? Where at some point, both sides realized that they thought they would be better off trying to win an efficient war of attrition. Ultimately, it was Germany who got worn out first, simply because, again, economic sanctions, the economic pressures of maintaining the war machine over a period of years was what caused them to finally lose their capability to replenish their troops, maintain their equipment. And when the collapse did happen, it happened very, very quickly. So all that is worth noting. And thanks again, as always, to our Colonel tier members of combatvetnews.com, as well as our Lieutenant tier members. I couldn't do this without you guys. I appreciate every one of you so much, and I will see you all in the next one. Cheers.